Hello and welcome back to the Shutter Sports Refresh. This is the weekly show that breaks down all of the most important news in sports for you. I'm your host Finn Noel, and let's get started with a special holiday episode. Now, the holiday season always coincides with college football playoffs, and there was plenty of that to go on this weekend. In the first round of the playoffs, there was a massive SEC matchup between Alabama and Oklahoma. Now, these two teams played earlier in the season, not in a playoff game, just a regular season game, and Oklahoma ended up taking it 23-21 in a classic match. And at the start of the game, it was looking like Oklahoma was going to do the same thing in the playoffs, coming out to a 17-0 lead early. But no team has beaten Alabama 2 times in one season since the 1800s. Yeah, you heard that right, and Alabama was not going to go down without a fight. They stormed into a 27 unanswered point scoring run and ended up taking home the win. With that win, Alabama now moves into the second round of the playoffs to take on the number 1 seeded Indiana. Now, Alabama played Oklahoma on Friday night, but the rest of the round 1 matchups were on Saturday. Now, the first of those games was a bit of a snooze fest between Miami and Texas A&M. Now, this game was very low scoring, ended up being tied 3-3 in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, it was Miami and Carson Beck who ended up leading a drive to win the game, moving on to face number 2 seed Ohio State. And the other 2 games on Saturday were more high scoring, but were not nearly as close. We saw Ole Miss absolutely dominate Tulane, scoring 41 points. And they were then way outdone by Oregon, who scored over 50 points against James Madison University. And so with those wins, Ole Miss will move on to play Georgia in the second round, and Oregon will move on to face Texas Tech. And in other college football news, the Heisman or MVP award for college football was given out recently, and it was Indiana's quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. Congratulations to Mendoza on that win, as he hopes to lead Indiana to a national championship win. Sticking on the topic of football, let's move into the NFL, where week 16 of games just finished up, only a few weeks left until playoffs. Now, the week kicked off with a huge game on Thursday night between the LA Rams and Seattle Seahawks. Now, both these teams are fantastic and are fighting for the top of their division. Now, the first half was super back and forth, but in the second half, the Rams managed to pull away to a 30-17 lead thanks to their quarterback, Matthew Stafford, who seems to be the favorite for MVP this year. Now, that lead seemed insurmountable, but the Seahawks fought hard and fought back and ended up tying the game. Now, the game would go to overtime, where, remember, each team gets one chance to try to score a touchdown. And on the Rams' turn, it was Stafford throwing to his number 1 receiver, Puka Nacua, and he ended up scoring a touchdown and nailing a 1-point conversion. Now, the Seahawks were able to do a scoring of their own, and they went for the 2-point conversion and the win. And they ended up succeeding on that 2-point conversion, taking home the overtime victory 38-37. What a matchup. Now, this is a massive win for the Seahawks, as for playoff standings, the winner of each division gets home field advantage in the playoffs. And with that win, the Seahawks now lead the NFC West division over the Rams, so massive implications there. Now, we had another division battle for the NFC North this time between the Green Bay Packers and Chicago Bears. Now, the start of this game was an entertaining one, and it looked like it was going to be super close, but in the first quarter, the Packers quarterback Jordan Love got hit in the head and had to leave the game. Now, it was the Packers backup quarterback Malik Willis who ended up actually playing super well and giving the Packers a 16-6 lead in the fourth quarter. But if you haven't learned already this week, the NFL and football in general has some crazy comebacks, and the Bears were not done yet. It was the Bears quarterback Caleb Williams who showed off his immense talent, throwing 2 perfect throws and scoring 2 touchdowns to give his team the win. And with that win, the Bears now have a commanding lead in the NFC North division. Next up, let's move into some NBA basketball, and we're going to ignore the random set change. The NBA Cup, or the NBA's in-season tournament, concluded on Tuesday, and it was everything that it was shaped up to be. The game was between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs, and the big question for this one was how well the Spurs' 7'5" Victor Wembanyama would be playing, and if he'd be playing at all, as he has been dealing with some injuries lately. Now, Wembanyama did end up playing, but coming off the bench for the Spurs and making a big impact. Unfortunately for the Spurs, though, Wembanyama's impact wasn't enough to win them the NBA Cup championship, as the New York Knicks cruised to a relatively easy win in the fourth quarter. The NBA Cup MVP was named the Knicks' Jalen Brunson, who finished with 25 points in the finals. Now, the Knicks ended up breaking tradition and not hanging a banner for their NBA Cup win, but nonetheless, it is still important and should still be celebrated, so congratulations to New York. Let's move over now to a unique situation in boxing. The big matchup this weekend was between former Disney star and YouTuber Jake Paul taking on former heavyweight champion in the boxing world, Anthony Joshua. And to no one's surprise, Joshua took this fight easily. Paul managed to evade Joshua's punches for the first 6 rounds, but it was inevitable and Joshua ended up breaking his jaw on the knockout punch. Paul has a lot of fans that root against him, so the world was pretty happy to see that happen. And for our last segment of the show this week, let's move over to some soccer as we'll do a Champions League recap. Now, there are still 2 match days left and a ton to play for, but some teams have already clinched an advancement into the playoffs, so let's list those teams off. Now, the top 6 teams, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, PSG, Man City, and Atalanta, have clinched at least advancing to the knockout stage and are currently pegged to go straight into the round of 16. And while technically every team is still in the race for the playoffs, there are a couple teams that are looking unlikely. Make sure to tune into the refresh in the following weeks to see what happens at the end of this Champions League season. And that will do it for this week's episode of the Shutter Sports Refresh. I've been your host, Finn Noel, and I hope you learned something. You can check me and our writer Lucky Roberts out on social media right below my head. And make sure to check out our brand new Instagram account at Shutter Sports Refresh on Instagram for breaking news, not just weekly highlights. Thanks for watching.